Daniel Sterling had everything money could buy except the one thing he wanted most: his son's laughter echoing through the halls of his mansion again. 5-year-old Eli hadn't walked, spoken, or even smiled since the car accident that killed his mother and damaged his spine 2 years ago, leaving him frozen in a world where the best doctors in the world spoke in whispers about managing expectations and accepting reality. The Sterling estate ran on schedules and silence, the staff treating Eli like a porcelain doll that might shatter if they dared to hope, until the morning Mavis Washington arrived with her worn leather bag and eyes that held secrets. She was supposed to be just another maid, invisible and efficient, someone to dust the priceless art and polish the marble floors. But when she walked past Eli's room and saw him lying there like a bird with broken wings, something deep inside her stirred. They called her the help, but Mavis Washington was about to become the miracle nobody saw coming. The morning fog rolled across the manicured lawns of the Sterling estate like a thick blanket, hiding the sprawling mansion from the world below. Up here, high above the city, everything seemed untouchable. Perfect. Cold. Daniel Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his home office, watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across the fog. His reflection stared back at him. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled dark hair, a crisp white shirt that cost more than most people made in a week. He checked his watch. 6:30. The Hong Kong markets would be closing soon, and he needed to review the numbers before his conference call at 7. Behind him, the house stirred to life with practiced precision. The staff moved through their morning routines like clockwork, each person knowing exactly where to be and when. The Sterling mansion ran on schedules, protocols, and silence. Especially silenced in the East Wing, 5-year-old Eli Sterling sat, propped up in his specialized bed, staring at nothing. His pale blue eyes, so much like his late mother's, remained fixed on some invisible point beyond the ceiling. The morning nurse, Patricia, entered with his medication tray, her soft-soled shoes barely making a sound on the marble floor. "Good morning, Eli," she said gently, though she expected no response. She never got one. The boy hadn't spoken a word since his mother died 2 years ago. The doctors said it was psychological trauma combined with his condition, a rare neuromuscular disorder that had stolen his ability to walk before he'd even learned how. Patricia administered the medications with practiced efficiency, checking each vital sign and recording them in the tablet. Eli's small body remained limp, offering no resistance, but no cooperation either. His thin arms lay at his sides, his legs motionless beneath the Egyptian cotton sheets. The only sign of life was the steady rise and fall of his chest and the occasional blink of those distant eyes. Down in the kitchen, the head butler, Charles Whitmore, supervised the breakfast preparations with military precision. He'd been with the Sterling family for 15 years, since before Mrs. Sterling's death, and he ran the household staff like a well-oiled machine. "The new maid arrives today," announced Caroline Fisher, the estate manager, as she entered the kitchen with her clipboard. Her gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her black dress was pressed to perfection. "Some woman from the agency." Her references checked out, barely. Charles sniffed dismissively. "The last 3 have quit within a month. This big house, the boy's condition, it's too much for most people." "Well, this one better last," Caroline muttered. "Mr. Sterling doesn't like disruptions." The doorbell rang at precisely 8 o'clock. Caroline answered it herself, finding a black woman in her late 30s standing on the threshold. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a worn leather bag. Her hair was pulled back in neat braids, and her dark eyes held a quiet strength that made Caroline unconsciously straighten her spine. "You must be." Caroline glanced at her clipboard. "Mavis Washington." "Yes, ma'am," Mavis replied, her voice soft but clear. There was something about the way she stood, not submissive, not proud, just present. Caroline led her through the mansion, rattling off rules and expectations. "Mr. Sterling values discretion above all else. You're not to speak to him unless spoken to. The boy's room requires special attention, but you're not to interact with him. That's the medical staff's responsibility. Your primary duties are general cleaning, laundry, and maintaining the guest quarters." Mavis nodded, taking in the grand hallways lined with expensive art, the marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, the heavy silence that seemed to press down from the vaulted ceilings. This wasn't a home. It was a museum. The boy, Mavis said quietly. What's his name? Caroline's lips pursed. Eli. But as I said, you won't be. Every child has a name, Mavis said simply. It matters. Caroline stared at her for a moment, then continued the tour without comment. In his office, Daniel handled his business calls with the same detached efficiency he applied to everything. Merger talks with a Silicon Valley startup, quarterly projections for his investment firm, numbers, strategies, profits, things he could control, things that made sense, unlike the small, broken boy down the hall who reminded him every day of his failures. The soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Charles entered with the morning mail and a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, exactly as Daniel had taken it for the past decade. The new maid has arrived, sir, Charles informed him. Daniel didn't look up from his computer screen. Fine. Will you be dining in tonight? No. I have the Morrison dinner. Make sure Eli has everything he needs. Charles hesitated. Of course, sir. Though perhaps you might visit him before you leave. Daniel's fingers paused on the keyboard. Is there a medical issue? No, sir. I simply thought. Then there's no need. Daniel resumed typing. Thank you, Charles. The butler withdrew, and Daniel returned to his numbers. It was easier this way. Safer. The boy had the best medical care money could buy. The finest specialists. Round-the-clock nursing. What more could he offer? His presence wouldn't make Eli walk. It wouldn't bring back Sarah. It would only remind them both of everything they'd lost. Meanwhile, Mavis had begun her duties, moving through the mansion with quiet efficiency. She cleaned the already spotless surfaces, organized the already perfect closets, and maintained the illusion that this house needed her. But as she worked, she listened. She observed. She noticed things. She noticed how the staff spoke about Eli in hushed tones, as if he were already gone. She noticed how they avoided his wing unless absolutely necessary. She noticed the photographs that had been turned face down in the living room. A beautiful woman with kind eyes and a radiant smile, holding a baby at lunch. The staff gathered in the kitchen for their meal. Mavis sat quietly at the end of the table, eating her sandwich while the others gossiped. The boy didn't touch his breakfast again. Patricia sighed. I don't know why we bother with solid foods. He barely takes the liquid nutrition. It's been getting worse, agreed Jennifer, the night nurse. He used to at least look at you when you entered the room. Now it's like he's not even there. Can you blame him? Charles said quietly. No, mother. A father who can't bear to look at him, trapped in a body that doesn't work. What does he have to live for? Mavis set down her sandwich. May I ask how long it's been since someone sang to him? The table fell silent. Everyone stared at her. Caroline laughed, but it was sharp, mocking. Sang to him? This isn't a Disney movie, Miss Washington. The boy has severe neurological damage. He needs medical care, not lullabies. Music reaches places medicine can't, Mavis said simply. Stick to your cleaning, Caroline warned. And stay out of the boy's room unless specifically assigned there. That afternoon, while the household took its customary quiet hour, Daniel, in his office, the nurses on break, the other staff attending to various duties, Mavis found herself in the hallway outside Eli's room. The door was slightly open. She could see him lying there, still as a doll, staring at nothing. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. But something pulled her forward. Mavis entered the room slowly, carefully. Eli didn't react to her presence. She didn't approach the bed, didn't touch anything medical. She simply stood near the window and began to hum. It was an old song her grandmother used to sing. Something about sunshine and morning glories. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, Eli's eyes shifted. Just slightly. Just enough to glance in her direction. Mavis kept humming, soft and steady. She didn't move closer, didn't make any sudden movements. She just stood there, letting the melody fill the sterile silence. It's all right, baby, she said gently when the song ended. You don't have to do anything today. Just listen. From the hallway, Patricia watched in confusion. She'd been about to intervene, to remind this new maid of her place, but something stopped her. The way Eli had moved his eyes, she hadn't seen him do that in weeks. That evening, as Daniel prepared for his dinner engagement, Charles brought him the daily report on Eli's condition. Vitals stable. Medication administered on schedule. No significant changes, Daniel read aloud. The same report, every day? He signed it without looking up. There was one thing, Charles ventured. The new maid. She was humming near Eli's room. Patricia said he seemed to respond. Daniel's jaw tightened. I specifically said the staff is not to disturb him unnecessarily. Of course, sir. I'll speak to her. After Charles left, Daniel stood and walked to his bedroom to change for dinner. He had to pass Eli's room to get there. As always, he kept his eyes straight ahead, his steps quick and purposeful. But tonight, something made him pause. Through the crack beneath the door, he could see the soft glow of the nightlight. His son was in there. His boy, Sarah's boy, broken and unreachable. A constant reminder of Daniel's inability to protect the people he loved. He pressed his hand against the door for just a moment, then pulled it back as if burned. He couldn't. He just couldn't. Down in the staff quarters, Mavis unpacked her few belongings in her small room. She pulled out a worn photo album and opened it carefully. There, smiling back at her, was a young girl with bright eyes and Mavis's same gentle smile. The girl was in a hospital bed, but she was laughing at something off camera. Mavis traced the photo with her finger. I know you sent me here, baby girl, she whispered. I won't let him down like they let you down. The next morning arrived with unusual sunshine breaking through the typical fog. Mavis was up before dawn, already in the kitchen when the cook, Rosa, arrived to start breakfast. You're early, Rosa observed, surprised to find the coffee already brewing. Old habits, Mavis replied with a small smile. My grandmother always said the day begins when you greet it, not when it greets you. Rosa, a sturdy woman in her 50s who'd been with the Sterling family for 8 years, poured herself a cup. You'll burn out quick with that attitude here. This house, it takes from you. Only if you let it, Mavis said gently as the staff began their morning routines. Mavis made an unusual request to Caroline. I'd like to clean Eli's room myself from now on, she said. Caroline looked up from her scheduling tablet, eyebrows raised. That's typically done on rotation to prevent attachment. I understand, but consistency might be good for him. Familiar faces, familiar sounds. You're a maid, not a therapist, Caroline said coldly. Besides, Patricia and Jennifer handle. I'm not asking to interfere with his medical care, Mavis interrupted quietly. Just to clean his space. To make it less. She looked around at the stark walls, the industrial medical equipment. Clinical. Caroline was about to refuse when Charles walked in. What's this about? Miss Washington wants to personally handle the boys' room, Caroline said with clear disapproval. Charles studied Mavis thoughtfully. Mr. Sterling did say to ensure Eli has everything he needs. Perhaps a consistent cleaning schedule would be beneficial. Caroline's mouth tightened, but she nodded curtly. Fine, but any disruption to his medical care, and you're back to the guest quarters. Over the following days, Mavis began her quiet transformation of Eli's space. Nothing dramatic. Mr. Sterling would notice that. Just small things. She replaced the harsh white blinds with softer curtains that still let in light, but painted gentle shadows on the walls. She brought in a small radio and left it on a classical station, volume barely above a whisper. She arranged the medical supplies so they were less visible, tucked behind decorative boxes that looked less institutional, and she hummed. Always humming. Different songs each day, spirituals her grandmother taught her, pop songs from the radio. Made-up melodies that seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside her. Patricia began to notice changes. He's tracking movement better, she told Jennifer during their shift change. Yesterday, when Mavis was cleaning, he actually turned his head to follow her. Jennifer was skeptical. Probably just coincidence. The doctor said, I know what. The doctor said, but I also know what I'm seeing. In the kitchen, Rosa found herself humming along to melodies she'd heard drifting from Eli's room. The gardener, Thomas, started whistling while he worked, something he hadn't done since Mrs. Sterling passed. Even the typically stoic Charles caught himself tapping his foot to an unheard rhythm while reviewing the household accounts. Something was shifting in the Sterling mansion. The silence was still there, but it was different now, like the pause between musical notes rather than the void between heartbeats. 3 weeks into Mavis's employment, it happened. She was dusting the bookshelf in Eli's room, humming a silly song about a rabbit who lost his tail, when she heard it. A sound so small she almost missed it. A giggle. She froze, afraid to turn around. afraid to break whatever spell had just been cast. Slowly, carefully, she looked over her shoulder. Eli was looking right at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her. And the corner of his mouth was turned up in the tiniest smile. "Well, hello there," Mavis said softly, as if speaking to a butterfly that had just landed on her hand. "I see you in there." The smile faded, but his eyes stayed focused on her. It was enough. It was everything. Patricia, returning from her break, witnessed the interaction from the doorway. Her medical training told her to document it, to report it, to analyze it. But something deeper, something human, told her to simply watch. That evening, she did report it to Daniel, as protocol demanded. He smiled. Daniel asked, not looking up from his laptop. "Yes, sir," and maintained eye contact for approximately 30 seconds. Daniel's fingers stilled on the keyboard. Could be involuntary. Facial spasms are common with his condition. It seemed purposeful, sir. Daniel finally looked up. "Patricia, I appreciate your optimism, but we've been down this road before. 3 specialists, 2 experimental treatments, thousands of dollars in therapy. Don't get hopeful over a twitch." But that night, Daniel found himself standing outside Eli's room again. This time, the door was slightly open, and he could hear Mavis inside. She was speaking softly, so softly he had to strain to hear. "You remember dancing, don't you? Before your legs forgot how? Your spirit remembers. We'll find it again, baby. No rush. We've got all the time in the world." Daniel wanted to storm in, to tell her to stop filling his son's head with impossible dreams. But something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't pity. It wasn't false hope. It was certainty, as if she knew something the rest of them didn't. The next morning, Caroline confronted Mavis in the laundry room. "The staff is talking," she said. "They say you're getting too close to the boy." Mavis continued folding sheets, her movements calm and methodical. "Is he not worth getting close to? That's not the point. You're creating disruption. False hope." "There's no such thing as false hope," Mavis replied. "There's only hope or giving up." Caroline's face reddened. "You think you're some kind of miracle worker? You're a maid. You dust furniture and wash windows. Don't forget your place." "I know exactly what my place is," Mavis said quietly. "Do you?" Before Caroline could respond, they heard a crash from upstairs. Both women ran toward the sound, finding Patricia in Eli's room, staring in shock at an overturned water pitcher on the floor. "He knocked it over," Patricia said, her voice shaking. "He reached for it and knocked it over." Caroline scoffed. "Probably a spasm." "No," Patricia insisted. "I saw him. He was trying to get it. He wanted the water." That afternoon, something even more remarkable happened. Mavis was late to Eli's room, held up by Caroline with an endless list of additional duties meant to keep her away from the boy. When she finally arrived, she found Eli's hand raised, finger pointing toward the door, pointing at her. "You were waiting for me," Mavis breathed. "Oh, sweet boy, you were waiting." She approached the bed slowly and, for the first time, gently took his small hand in hers. It was cold, fragile like a bird's wing, but she felt the slightest pressure. As his fingers curled around hers, from his office, Daniel watched the security monitor. He'd had cameras installed in Eli's room for medical emergencies, but he rarely looked at them. Today, something had compelled him to check. He saw Mavis holding his son's hand. He saw Eli's fingers moving, actually moving, to maintain the contact. He saw something on his son's face he hadn't seen in 2 years: peace. That night, Daniel called a staff meeting in the formal dining room. Everyone gathered: Charles, Caroline, Patricia, Jennifer, Rosa, Thomas, even Mavis, though she stood apart from the others. "I've been informed," Daniel began, his voice controlled and businesslike, "that there have been some irregularities in my son's care. Deviations from established protocols." Caroline shot a triumphant look at Mavis. Daniel continued. "This house operates on order, discipline. We maintain professional boundaries for a reason. Eli's condition is serious, and his care requires medical expertise, not—" He paused, his eyes finding Mavis, "not fantasies." "Mr. Sterling," Patricia spoke up, surprising everyone. "With respect, sir, I've been caring for Eli for 18 months. What I've seen in the past 3 weeks, what you've seen," Daniel interrupted, "are coincidences, reflexes, nothing more." "Then explain this." Patricia pulled out her phone and showed a video. It was Eli, clear as day, laughing, actually laughing, as Mavis did a silly dance with a feather duster. The room went silent. Daniel stared at the screen, his face unreadable. "Delete that," he said quietly. "Sir, delete it." His voice was harder now. "We don't create false narratives. We don't. We don't torture ourselves with what we wish was true." He stood abruptly. "Everyone back to your duties." And Miss Washington, Mavis looked up at him. "Keep your interactions with my son to the absolute minimum required for your job." "A.M. I clear. Crystal clear, Mr. Sterling," Mavis replied. But there was something in her eyes that said this wasn't over. As everyone filed out, Daniel remained in the dining room alone. He pulled out his phone and looked at a photo he kept hidden in a locked folder. Sarah, radiant and laughing, holding baby Eli up in the air. The boy's legs were kicking, his face bright with joy. "I'm protecting him," Daniel whispered to the photo. "I'm protecting him from hoping for things that can't happen." But even as he said it, he wondered who he was really protecting. Later that night, after the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, Mavis slipped into Eli's room one more time. The boy was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Your daddy's scared," she whispered, sitting in the chair beside his bed. "He's so scared of losing you that he's already let you go. But I see you fighting in there. I see you remembering who you are." She pulled out her photo album, showing him the picture of her daughter. "This was my Grace. The doctors said she'd never wake up. Said her brain was too damaged. But I knew better. I sang to her every day, talked to her, loved her awake. And you know what? She came back to me. For 3 beautiful months, she came back." Tears rolled down Mavis's cheeks. She died anyway. But those 3 months she was alive. Really alive. And that's all any of us can ask for, isn't it? To be truly alive, even if it's just for a moment. Eli's hand moved slightly, his fingers brushing against the photo. "That's right." Mavis smiled through her tears. "You understand. You're going to show them all, aren't you? You're going to show them what it means to fight for every single moment." The morning after Daniel's staff meeting, the Sterling mansion felt different. The warmth Mavis had been slowly cultivating seemed to have frosted over, leaving everyone walking on eggshells. But Mavis went about her duties as if nothing had changed, her quiet humming still drifting through the hallways like a persistent spring breeze refusing to acknowledge winter's grip. Charles found her in the library, dusting the rarely touched books. He closed the door behind him, his usually perfect posture slightly slouched. "Miss Washington," he began formally, then seemed to reconsider. "Mavis, you need to be careful." She continued dusting, not looking at him. "I'm always careful. Mr. Whitmore. You know what I mean. Mr. Sterling is not a man who tolerates defiance. And Caroline," he paused, "she's already lodged a formal complaint with the agency that placed you." Now Mavis did turn. "For what?" "Doing my job too well. For overstepping boundaries. For giving false hope to a grieving father." "Is he grieving?" Mavis asked quietly. "Or is he hiding?" Charles was quiet for a moment. "I've worked for this family for 15 years. I watched that boy come into this world. I watched his mother leave it. And I've watched his father die a little more each day since. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder for who?" Mavis asked. "For Mr. Sterling? For you? Or for that little boy upstairs who's been written off by everyone who's supposed to love him? That's not fair." "Fair?" Mavis set down her dusting cloth. "Was it fair when my Grace lay in that hospital bed and doctor after doctor told me to let her go? Was it fair when she proved them all wrong, only to leave anyway? Nothing about this is fair, Mr. Whitmore. But that doesn't mean we stop trying." Before Charles could respond, the library door opened. Daniel stood there, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, his expression unreadable. "Charles, I need you to review the arrangements for tomorrow's investor dinner." "Mavis." He paused, his eyes meeting hers for the first time since she'd arrived. "My office." Now, the walk to Daniel's office felt like a march to execution. Mavis had seen the space from the hallway, all glass and steel, overlooking the grounds, as cold and imposing as the man who occupied it. "Sit," Daniel said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive desk. Mavis sat, her hands folded in her lap, her back straight. Daniel remained standing, looking out the window. "Do you know what it's like to lose everything that matters?" "Yes," Mavis answered simply. He turned, perhaps surprised by her directness. "Then you should understand why I can't." Why I won't. Let my son believe in impossibilities. With respect, Mr. Sterling, the only impossibility is a life without hope. Daniel's jaw clenched. Hope? Hope is what I had when the first specialist said Eli might walk with therapy. Hope is what I had when we tried the experimental treatment in Switzerland. Hope is what killed my wife. Mavis's eyebrows rose slightly. Daniel continued, his control slipping. She hoped so hard, believed so completely that Eli would get better, that she ignored her own symptoms. The cancer spread while she was focused on his physical therapy. By the time she admitted she was sick, it was too late. So don't talk to me about hope, Miss Washington. Hope is a luxury I can't afford. Hope didn't kill your wife, Mavis said gently. Cancer did. And fear is killing your son. Daniel slammed his hand on the desk. How dare you? I dare because somebody has to. Mavis stood, matching his intensity. That boy is reaching for something, Mr. Sterling. He's trying. And every time you walk past his room without going in, every time you treat him like he's already gone, you're telling him it's not worth the effort. Get out, Daniel said quietly, dangerously. Fire me, if you want, Mavis said, heading for the door. But it won't change what's happening. Your son is waking up. The question is whether you'll be there when he does. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Daniel sank into his chair, his hands shaking slightly. He pulled open his desk drawer and took out a small video player, one he'd hidden there years ago. On the screen, a younger version of himself pushed a laughing Eli on a swing while Sarah filmed. Higher, Daddy, the boy's voice rang out. Higher, any higher, and you'll fly away. Past Daniel laughed. Then fly with me. Eli giggled. Daniel shut off the video, burying his face in his hands. That afternoon, during physical therapy, something remarkable happened. Marcus, the therapist, was going through the usual range of motion exercises when Eli suddenly resisted. Whoa, Marcus said, surprised. Patricia, are you seeing this? Patricia rushed over. Eli was pushing back against Marcus's hands, trying to move his legs himself. Get Mavis, Patricia said quickly. But Mr. Sterling said, get her. When Mavis entered, Eli's efforts doubled. His little face scrunched with determination, and slowly, incredibly, his right leg bent at the knee. Just a few degrees, but it was voluntary movement. That's it, baby, Mavis said softly, moving closer. You show them what you can do. Marcus was frantically taking notes. This is, in 6 months of therapy, he's never. How? He just needed a reason, Mavis said, gently placing her hand on Eli's foot. The boy's eyes locked onto hers, and he bent his knee again, more this time. From the doorway, Caroline watched with narrowed eyes. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message. That evening, while Daniel was at yet another business dinner, Mavis found something that changed everything. She was organizing the storage room when she discovered a box of old home videos, labeled in feminine handwriting. Eli's first years. She shouldn't watch them. She knew that. But something compelled her to wheel the old TV from the storage room into the staff break room and insert a tape. The screen flickered to life, showing a much younger, happier Daniel playing with baby Eli. But what struck Mavis most was the boy himself, crawling, pulling himself up on furniture, taking wobbly steps with Sarah's encouragement. He walked. Mavis breathed. He walked before the accident, Rosa said from behind her. The cook had been watching from the doorway. You didn't know? Mavis shook her head. Rosa sat down heavily. Car accident. Eli was 3. Mrs. Sterling was driving him to a play date when they were hit by a drunk driver. She was killed instantly. Eli, the doctors said the spinal trauma caused his condition. Mr. Sterling never forgave himself for not being with them. So Eli's condition isn't congenital, Mavis said slowly. He knew how to walk. His body remembers. The doctors said the damage was too severe. That he'd never. The doctors were wrong, Mavis said firmly. She ejected the tape and stood. Where's Mr. Sterling's dinner tonight? The Morrison Hotel, but you can't. Mavis was already gone. She left the video playing on Daniel's desk with a simple note. Your son remembers. Do you? When Daniel returned home near midnight, he found the video. Waiting. He almost threw it away, but something made him watch. And watch again. And again. The boy on the screen was so alive, so vibrant. Running, jumping, dancing. The same boy who now lay still as stone down the hall. Daniel walked slowly to Eli's room. For the first time in months, he went inside. Eli was awake, staring at the ceiling as always. "Hey, buddy," Daniel said awkwardly, standing at the foot of the bed. I'm sorry I haven't been here. I'm sorry for a lot of things." Eli's eyes shifted slightly, finding his father's face. Daniel moved closer, sitting in the chair Mavis usually occupied. "Your mom would be so angry with me. She always said you were a fighter. Said you got that from me, but I think you got it from her." A tear rolled down Daniel's cheek. "I'm scared, Eli. I'm so scared of losing you too that I already lost you, didn't I?" Eli's hand moved slightly, fingers uncurling. Daniel reached out hesitantly, then took his son's small hand in his. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They stayed like that until Daniel fell asleep in the chair, still holding Eli's hand. That's how Mavis found them the next morning. The morning rain drummed against the windows of the Sterling mansion, creating rivulets that raced down the glass like tears of joy. Mavis stood in the kitchen, preparing Eli's breakfast tray with special care. She'd noticed he'd been watching her more intently lately, his eyes following every movement with a focus that hadn't been there before. Rosa hummed along to the radio while kneading bread dough, something she'd started doing since Mavis arrived. The kitchen, once silent except for the clink of dishes, now held warmth. "Mr. Sterling stayed in Eli's room all night," Rosa mentioned casually. "Charles found him there this morning, still in his suit from yesterday." Mavis smiled softly. Sometimes the first step is the hardest. Speaking of steps, Patricia rushed into the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement. "You have to come. See this. Now." They hurried to Eli's room where Marcus, the physical therapist, was setting up his equipment. Daniel was there too, having changed into casual clothes. The first time anyone had seen him in anything but a suit in years. "Show them what you did, Eli," Marcus encouraged. The boy looked at Mavis, then at his father. With visible effort, he lifted his right leg off the bed. Not much, maybe 2 inches, but it was completely voluntary. "That's wonderful, baby," Mavis said, her eyes shining. Daniel knelt beside the bed. "That's amazing, son. Can you do it again?" Eli's face scrunched with concentration, and he lifted his leg again, holding it for a few seconds before letting it drop. The room erupted in quiet celebration. Patricia was crying. Marcus was frantically documenting everything. Daniel looked like he might collapse from the emotion of it all, but Mavis noticed something else. Eli's eyes were fixed on the window where the rain was creating patterns on the glass. His hand moved slightly, fingers wiggling as if trying to mirror the raindrops dance. "He wants to play," she said softly. Everyone turned to look at her. "The rain. He wants to play in the rain." "That's not possible," Caroline said. From the doorway, having heard the commotion. "He's medically fragile. He could catch pneumonia. A few minutes won't hurt," Daniel said, surprising everyone. "Get him ready." 20 minutes later, bundled in warm clothes, Eli was carried out to the covered patio where he could feel the mist from the rain. Daniel held him carefully while Mavis stood nearby with towels, and then it happened. Eli laughed, not a small giggle or a brief chuckle, but a full, belly-deep laugh as the rain mist touched his face. The sound was so pure, so unexpected, that everyone froze. Again, the word was barely a whisper, hoarse from disuse, but it was unmistakably Eli's voice. Again, Daniel's legs nearly gave out. "Did he just—" He spoke, Patricia gasped, fumbling for her phone to record. "He actually spoke." Daniel spun gently with Eli in his arms, both of them laughing now as the rain misted around them. Mavis watched with tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her heart. From the window, Caroline watched too, her expression unreadable. She turned away and made another phone call. That afternoon, while Eli napped exhausted but happy, Mavis was organizing his closet when she heard him stirring. She turned to find him awake, looking at her with those intense blue eyes. "Stay," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere, baby," she assured him. He shook his head slightly. "Stay here." His hand patted the bed beside him. Mavis glanced at the door. She knew she shouldn't, knew Caroline would have her fired if she found out. But how could she deny him? She sat on the edge of the bed, and Eli immediately scooted closer, his movement still limited but determined. He reached for her hand and held it with surprising strength. "Sing," he asked. Mavis sang. She sang the old spirituals her grandmother taught her, The lullabies she'd sung to Grace, new songs she made up on the spot. And as she sang, something miraculous happened. Eli pulled himself up. Using Mavis's arm for support, he pulled himself to a sitting position. His legs dangled over the edge of the bed, and with enormous effort, he placed his feet on the floor. Eli, baby, be careful, but he wasn't listening. His face was set with determination that reminded her painfully of Grace in her final days. That fierce need to prove everyone wrong, to live while there was still time. Eli pushed himself forward, his legs shaking, and for one incredible moment, he stood. His knees buckled immediately, and Mavis caught him, both of them falling back onto the bed. I did it, Eli whispered against her shoulder. I stood up. You sure did, baby. You sure did. Don't tell, he said, his voice stronger now. Surprise. Daddy. Mavis pulled back to look at him. This boy, written off by every specialist, given up on by his own father, was planning surprises. It'll be our secret, she promised. Over the next few days, while maintaining the appearance of normal routine, Mavis worked with Eli in secret. She'd position his wheelchair just far enough from the bed that he'd have to take a step to reach it. She'd, accidentally, leave his favorite toy on the dresser, encouraging him to stretch and reach. Daniel, meanwhile, had undergone his own transformation. He started working from home more often, positioning his laptop in Eli's room. He read bedtime stories, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. He even attempted some of Mavis's songs, his deep voice cracking on the high notes, making Eli giggle. You're different, Charles observed one morning, finding Daniel in the kitchen, actually eating breakfast instead of just grabbing coffee. Am I? Daniel asked, but he was smiling, something Charles hadn't seen in years. Mavis is good for this house, Charles said carefully. Good for Eli? Good for you. Daniel nodded slowly. She saved us, Charles. I just don't know how to thank someone for that. You don't thank them, Charles said. You keep them. But Caroline had other plans. She'd been in contact with the agency, with board members, with anyone who would listen to her concerns about the unprofessional relationship developing in the Sterling household. The next Monday, while Daniel was in a video conference, Caroline confronted Mavis in Eli's room. I know what you're doing, she hissed. Playing the miracle worker, making yourself indispensable. But I see through you. What you see, Mavis said calmly, continuing to fold Eli's clothes, is a reflection of your own heart. Nothing more. You're after his money. Or fame. Some angle, Caroline. Eli's voice, though still weak, cut through the accusation. Stop. Both women turned to find the boy glaring at Caroline with his father's intensity. She's my friend, Eli said firmly. You're mean. Caroline's face went red. I'm trying to protect this family. No, Eli said. You're scared. Scared of love. The estate manager fled the room, and that evening, she made a crucial mistake. She called one of Daniel's board members, Richard Morrison, with her concerns. Morrison, always looking for leverage, saw an opportunity. The next day, a photographer appeared at the mansion's gates. Then another. Within hours, word had somehow leaked that the Sterling heir, previously thought permanently disabled, was showing signs of recovery. Daniel was in his office when Charles burst in. Sir, we have a situation. They looked out the window to see news vans pulling up to the gate. Daniel's face went dark. How did they find out? Before Charles could answer, Daniel's phone rang. It was Morrison. Daniel, I'm hearing concerning reports about your son's condition. And something about a maid practicing unlicensed therapy? The board is worried about liability. Daniel hung up and stormed to Eli's room where Mavis was reading to the boy. Did you do this? He demanded. Did you contact the media? Mavis looked genuinely confused. What? No, I would never. Someone did. Someone leaked that Eli is improving, and now there are reporters outside, and the board is asking questions. Daddy, Eli said quietly. Not Mavis. Never Mavis. Daniel's anger deflated slightly, but the fear remained. They'll turn this into a circus. They'll invade our privacy, question everything. Then we give them the truth. Mavis said simply. The truth. That your son is fighting to walk again. That he's getting better. That love and persistence matter more than medical predictions. You don't understand, Daniel said. The media will tear us apart. They'll make you look like some kind of fraud, make me look negligent. A knock at the door interrupted them. Patricia entered with a tablet. Mr. Sterling, you need to see this. On the screen was a gossip blog with a blurry photo, clearly taken from distance, of Eli standing in his room, Mavis beside him. The headline read, Billionaire's paralyzed son standing? Miracle or manipulation? Daniel sank into a chair. It's starting. That night, after the chaos had died down and security had cleared the media from the gates, Mavis sat with Eli as he prepared for sleep. Are you in trouble? He asked, worry clear in his young voice. Don't you worry about me, baby. But if you have to leave, look at me, Mavis said gently. I made you a promise, remember? I'm not going anywhere. Eli was quiet for a moment. I want to show them. Tomorrow. I want to show Daddy I can walk. Are you sure you're ready? Eli nodded firmly. I can do it. With you there, I can do it. The next morning dawned gray and misty. Daniel was in his office, fielding calls from board members and PR representatives, when Patricia knocked urgently. Sir, you need to come to Eli's room. Now. Daniel rushed down the hall, expecting a medical emergency. Instead, he found Eli sitting on the edge of his bed, Mavis standing a few feet away. Watch, Daddy, Eli said. And then, using the bed for support, Eli stood. His legs shook, his face was tight with concentration, but he stood. Then, with Mavis holding her arms out but not touching him, Eli took a step. Then another. And another. 3 steps before his legs gave out and Mavis caught him, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Daniel fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. You walked. My God, Eli, you walked. I remembered, Eli said proudly. Mavis helped me remember. Daniel looked up at Mavis, and in that moment, all his walls came down. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for believing when I couldn't. The morning after Eli's 3 steps, the Sterling mansion was under siege. News vans lined the street outside the gates like vultures waiting for carrion. Photographers with long lenses perched in trees, on neighboring rooftops, anywhere they could steal a glimpse of the story that was captivating the nation. Daniel stood in his office, watching the circus below while his phone rang incessantly. His publicist, Amanda Cross, was on speaker, her usually calm voice strained. Daniel, we need to get ahead of this. The story is everywhere. Billionaire's paralyzed son secretly walking. Some outlets are calling it a miracle. Others are suggesting you've been hiding his recovery for tax benefits. Tax benefits? Daniel's voice was incredulous. My son's health is not a tax strategy. I know that, but the public doesn't. And there's another angle developing. This Maid, Mavis Washington. Some reporters are digging into her background. They found out about her daughter. Daniel's stomach dropped. What about her daughter? That she died. That Mavis claimed she could help her when doctors couldn't. Daniel, they're painting her as either a delusional woman projecting onto your son, or worse, a con artist. From the doorway, Mavis spoke quietly. Let them say what they want about me. Just protect Eli. Daniel turned to find her standing there, calm despite the storm swirling around them. Mavis, I didn't know you were. Patricia needs help with Eli's breakfast. The noise is upsetting him. She turned to leave, then paused. Mr. Sterling, whatever you decide to do, just remember, your son's progress is real. Don't let their doubt make you question what you've seen with your own eyes. After she left, Amanda's voice crackled through the speaker. Daniel, the board, is meeting this afternoon. Morrison is pushing for an emergency vote of no confidence. He says you're allowing emotion to cloud your judgment, putting the company's reputation at risk. Daniel's jaw clenched. Let them meet. I have more important things to worry about. He ended the call and walked to Eli's room. The boy was sitting up in bed, Mavis beside him, both watching the commotion outside through a gap in the curtains. Are those people here because of me? Eli asked, his voice small. They're here because they don't understand, Daniel said, sitting on the other side of the bed. People fear what they don't understand. They think Mavis is lying, Eli said. It wasn't a question. Some do. Daniel admitted that Eli's face set with determination. That same look he got before attempting each new physical milestone. Then I'll show them. Eli, you don't have to prove anything to anyone, Mavis said gently. Yes, I do, the boy insisted. They're being mean to you because of me. I need to show them you're not lying. Before anyone could stop him, Eli pushed himself to the edge of the bed. Using his father's arm for support, he stood. The effort was visible on his face, but he remained upright. "Open the curtains," he said. "Eli," Daniel started. "Please, Daddy, open them." Daniel exchanged a look with Mavis, then slowly pulled the curtains aside. The movement caught the attention of the photographers below. Within seconds, cameras were firing rapidly, capturing the image of Eli Sterling standing in his window. Mavis on one side, his father on the other. Eli raised his small hand and waved. The photos were online within minutes. Social media exploded. Hashtag Eli Standing started trending worldwide. But with the support came the skeptics. Videos were analyzed frame by frame. Some claimed they could see supports, wires, anything to explain away what seemed impossible. That afternoon, while Daniel attended the emergency board meeting, Mavis received a visitor. Caroline stood in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. "I need to speak with you," she said quietly. Rosa looked ready to intervene, but Mavis nodded for her to leave them alone. "I made a mistake," Caroline said, the words seemingly painful to speak. "I called Morrison. I thought I was protecting the family, but I see now what I've done." Mavis studied her for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Morrison is planning something worse. He has a doctor, someone willing to testify that Eli's recovery is temporary, that you're giving false hope. He wants to use it to force Daniel out and take control of the company." "And Eli? What happens to Eli and Morrison's plan?" Caroline's eyes filled with tears. "He mentioned a specialized facility, somewhere Eli could get proper care away from distractions." Mavis stood slowly. "You mean away from me? Away from his father?" "I'm sorry," Caroline whispered. "I was jealous. You came in and did what none of us could. You reached him. And instead of being grateful, She trailed off. "What do you want from me?" Mavis asked. "Nothing. I wanted to warn you. And to say I'm sorry. I'll speak to Mr. Sterling when he returns. I'll tell him everything." Meanwhile, at Sterling Corp headquarters, the boardroom was in chaos. Daniel sat at the head of the table, facing down 12 board members, with Morrison leading the charge. "Your judgment is compromised," Morrison declared. "You're allowing a domestic employee with no medical training to influence your son's care. The media attention is damaging our stock price." "My son is walking," Daniel said evenly. "Something your recommended specialist said would never happen. Temporary muscle spasms," Morrison countered, sliding a document across the table. "Dr. Kellerman is willing to testify that what's being observed is merely involuntary. Dr. Kellerman hasn't examined my son in 8 months," Daniel interrupted. "Because you refused further consultations after taking the advice of a maid." Morrison's face was red. "Daniel, we've been friends for 20 years. But this has to stop. Either you remove this woman from your home and get Eli proper care, or we'll have no choice but to remove you as CEO." Daniel stood slowly. "You want to remove me? Fine. But understand this. I will fight you with every resource I have. And when the media learns that this board tried to separate a recovering child from the person helping him heal, just to protect stock prices?" He smiled coldly. "Well, Morrison, I think you know how that story ends." He walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence. When Daniel arrived home, he found his front lawn transformed. Hundreds of people had gathered outside the gates, not reporters, but supporters. They held signs: "Let Mavis stay," "Love heals," "Team Eli." Some were parents of children with disabilities. Others were nurses, caregivers, people who understood that medicine wasn't always about degrees and certificates. Charles met him at the door. "Sir, it's been like this for hours." They started arriving after Eli waved from the window. Daniel made his way to Eli's room, where he found Mavis helping the boy with his exercises. Eli was standing between parallel bars Marcus had brought, taking slow, deliberate steps. "7 steps, Daddy," Eli announced proudly. 7 whole steps. "That's amazing, son." Daniel knelt beside him. "But you need to rest. You don't have to push so hard." "Yes, I do," Eli said firmly. "People need to see. They need to know Mavis isn't lying." That evening, Caroline made good on her promise. She sat in Daniel's office and confessed everything. Her resentment, her call to Morrison, the plan to discredit Mavis. Daniel listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he asked, "Why tell me now?" "Because I watched that little boy stand up for someone he loves," Caroline said, tears flowing freely. and I realized I've forgotten what it means to stand for anything beyond myself. You're fired, Daniel said simply. Caroline nodded. I know. But, Daniel continued, if you're willing to testify about Morrison's plan, I'll provide a recommendation for your next position. I'll do more than testify, Caroline said. I recorded my last conversation with him. She pulled out her phone and played the recording. Morrison's voice was clear. The boy would be better off in a facility. Sterling's too emotional to make rational decisions. Once we have control, we can manage the situation properly. Daniel took the phone. This changes everything. The next morning, Daniel did something unprecedented. He called a press conference. Not through his publicist, not through prepared statements, but personally. He stood on his front lawn, Eli in his arms, Mavis beside them. I want to address the speculation about my son's recovery, he began, his voice carrying across the crowd of reporters. Yes, Eli is learning to walk again. Yes, it's happening under the care of someone without medical degrees. But sometimes, healing isn't about credentials. Sometimes it's about someone believing in you when everyone else has given up. He looked at Mavis. This woman saved my son. Not with experimental treatments or surgeries, but with patience, love, and unshakable faith. She saw him not as a diagnosis, but as a little boy who needed someone to believe he could get better. Mr. Sterling, a reporter called out. What about claims that this is false hope? That the recovery is temporary? Before Daniel could answer, Eli spoke up, his young voice clear and strong. I'll show you. Daniel set him down carefully. Mavis stood about 5 feet away, her arms open but not reaching. The crowd fell silent. Eli took a step, then another, and another. 5 steps. 7. 10. He reached Mavis and fell into her arms, both of them crying. The crowd erupted. Reporters, supporters, even some of the camera operators were applauding. My son was told he would never walk again, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Mavis Washington proved them wrong. And if the board of Sterling Corp has a problem with that, they can find themselves a new CEO. The ultimatum changed everything. Within hours of Daniel's press conference, Sterling Corp's stock actually rose. Public sentiment had shifted overwhelmingly in favor of the Sterling family, and more importantly, in favor of Mavis. The board, seeing the writing on the wall, quickly distanced themselves from Morrison, who resigned to pursue other opportunities. 3 days after the press conference, Daniel found Mavis in the garden, watching Eli practice walking with his new pediatric walker. The boy was determined, his face scrunched in concentration as he navigated the stone path. I owe you an apology, Daniel said, sitting beside her on the bench. No, you don't. I do. When you first arrived, I treated you as just another employee. Even when I saw what you were doing for Eli, part of me resented it. You were succeeding where I had failed. Mavis turned to look at him. You didn't fail. You were grieving. There's a difference. You lost your daughter, but you didn't stop believing in the possibility of healing. I had to believe, Mavis said softly, because if I stopped believing, then her fight meant nothing. Grace taught me that the measure of a life isn't in its length, but in its depth. Every moment she was truly alive was a victory. They watched as Eli reached the fountain, laughing as he touched the cool water. I have a proposition, Daniel said. I want you to stay. Not as a maid, not as an employee, but as part of Eli's care team. Officially, with a salary that reflects your true value to this family. Mavis was quiet for a moment. I have conditions. Name them. First, I come and go as Mavis Washington, not as the help or the miracle worker or any other label people want to put on me. Second, we transform this house. No more sterile rooms and silent hallways. Eli needs life around him, laughter, music. Third, we open our doors to other families. What's happening here shouldn't be a secret. Daniel smiled. Is that all? One more thing. You need to forgive yourself for Sarah's death. Your son needs his father whole, not broken by guilt. Daniel's eyes glistened. I don't know how. The same way Eli learned to walk again, Mavis said. One step at a time. Over the following weeks, the Sterling mansion underwent a transformation. The clinical equipment was replaced with more child-friendly versions. Eli's room was painted in bright blues and greens, his choice. Music played throughout the house. Rosa taught Eli to make cookies, getting flour everywhere and loving every minute of it. Thomas, the gardener, built a small, accessible garden where Eli could plant flowers from his wheelchair. Charles, the once stoic butler, could often be found reading stories to Eli, doing different voices for all the characters. Even Patricia and Jennifer, the nurses, relaxed their rigid protocols, understanding that joy was as important as medicine. Caroline, before leaving for a position at a nonprofit serving special needs children, stopped by one last time. She found Mavis in Eli's room, helping him with his exercises. "I wanted to say goodbye," she said awkwardly. "And to thank you." "For what?" Mavis asked. "For showing me what really matters. I spent so many years focused on order, on control, that I forgot about compassion." She knelt beside Eli. "I'm sorry I wasn't kinder to you, little one." Eli studied her for a moment, then smiled. "It's okay. Mavis says everyone deserves second chances." Caroline's eyes filled with tears. She hugged the boy gently, then stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. "Take care of them, Mavis. They need you. We need each other." Mavis corrected point one afternoon. Daniel came home early from work to find Eli in the living room, standing at the coffee table, drawing. No walker, no support, just standing. "How long has he been doing that?" Daniel asked Mavis, who was watching from the couch. "About 10 minutes. He wanted to make you a picture." Eli looked up, beaming. "Daddy, look." He held up the drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands, with a big sun above them. "That's us," Eli explained. "You, me, and Mavis. Our family." Daniel and Mavis exchanged a look. The word hung in the air, family. "Eli," Daniel said carefully. "Mavis has her own life, her own." "No," Eli interrupted with 5-year-old certainty. "She's family. She stays." That evening, after Eli was asleep, Daniel found Mavis on the terrace, looking out at the city lights below. "He's right. You know," Daniel said. "You are family. This house was just walls and silence before you came. Now it's a home." "Mr. Sterling, Daniel." "Please, just Daniel." "Daniel," Mavis said softly. "I care about Eli deeply, and I'm grateful for everything you're offering. But I need you to understand, I'm not trying to replace Sarah. I'm not trying to be something I'm not." "I know," Daniel said. "You're being exactly who you need to be, who we need you to be." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Daniel spoke again. "I've been thinking about your idea, opening our doors to other families. What if we did more than that? What if we created a center? A place where children with neurological conditions could receive both medical care and the kind of emotional support you provide." Mavis turned to him, eyes bright. "You mean it? We could build it on the east side of the property. Hire staff who understand that healing is about more than medicine. You could train them, show them what you've shown us." "The Grace and Eli Center," Mavis said softly. "Perfect," Daniel agreed. The next morning brought a surprise. Marcus, the physical therapist, arrived with a special guest, Dr. Raymond Fitzgerald, one of the country's leading pediatric neurologists. "I've been following Eli's case," Dr. Fitzgerald said, shaking Daniel's hand. "What I'm seeing challenges everything I thought I knew about recovery from traumatic spinal injury." He spent 3 hours examining Eli, running tests, observing his movements. Mavis stayed close, keeping Eli calm and cooperative. Finally, Dr. Fitzgerald sat back, shaking his head in amazement. "The spinal damage is still visible on the scans, but somehow, Eli's body is finding new pathways. It's as if his nervous system is rewiring itself." "Is that possible?" Daniel asked. 6 months ago, I would have said no. But I'm looking at proof that it is. Whatever you're doing here, don't stop." He turned to Mavis. "I'd like to study your methods. Document them. Not to scrutinize, but to learn. What you've achieved here could help thousands of children." "It's not my methods," Mavis said. "It's love. It's believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves. It's seeing the whole child, not just the diagnosis." "Then we need to teach the medical community to see that too," Dr. Fitzgerald said. A week later, they held a small party for Eli's 6th birthday. Nothing elaborate. Daniel had learned that joy didn't require grandeur. Just close friends, the staff who had become family, and a chocolate cake that Eli and Rosa had made together. They sang happy birthday. Eli stood from his chair and walked, slowly, but steadily, to blow out his candles. No one commented on it. It had become his new normal. "Make a wish," Mavis encouraged. Eli closed his eyes tight, then blew out all 6 candles in one breath. "What did you wish for?" Daniel asked. "Can't tell." Eli grinned. But it already came true. That night, Daniel found a letter on his desk. It was from Mavis. "Daniel, 6 months ago, I came to this house looking for a job. I found a purpose. You've asked me to stay, to be part of Eli's life, part of your lives. My answer is yes, but I need you to know why. It's not because of the salary or the title or even the center we're planning to build. It's because in Eli, I see Grace's spirit living on. In you, I see a father who learned that strength isn't about standing alone, but about knowing when to accept help. You asked me once what I saw when I looked at Eli. I saw a boy who needed to remember he could fly. But what I didn't tell you was what I saw when I looked at you. I saw a man who needed to remember he could love without fear. Thank you for letting me be part of this journey. Thank you for trusting me with your son. Thank you for becoming the family I thought I'd lost forever. With love and gratitude, Mavis." Daniel wiped his eyes and walked to Eli's room. The boy was asleep, one hand clutching a photo Mavis had given him of all 3 of them at the press conference. Daniel kissed his forehead gently. "Sweet dreams, my brave boy," he whispered that he found Mavis in the kitchen, preparing Eli's supplements. "For the next day, I read your letter," he said simply. She looked up, vulnerable for the first time since he'd known her. "Stay," he said. "Not for a year or until Eli's better. Stay for good. This is your home now. We're your family now." Mavis's eyes filled with tears. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do. I'm asking you to help me raise my son. I'm asking you to help us heal. I'm asking you to be what you already are, the heart of this home." Before Mavis could respond, they heard a voice from the doorway. "Mavis." Eli stood there in his pajamas, wobbling slightly, but standing on his own. "Are you staying forever?" Mavis walked to him and knelt down, taking his small hands in hers. "What do you think, baby? Should I stay?" "Forever and ever," Eli said firmly. "Promise." Mavis looked up at Daniel, who nodded, his eyes pleading. "I promise," she said, pulling Eli into a hug. "Forever and ever." Daniel joined them, and for a moment, the 3 of them stood there in the kitchen, a billionaire who'd learned to feel again, a little boy who'd learned to walk again, and a woman who'd taught them both that miracles weren't about the impossible happening, but about never stopping believing it could. 6 months had passed since Mavis officially became part of the Sterling family. The mansion grounds were bustling with construction as the Grace and Eli Center took shape, a modern facility with bright, welcoming spaces where traditional medicine would meet the kind of compassionate care that had saved Eli. The boy himself was thriving. At 6.5 years old, he could walk unassisted for short distances, though he still used his walker for longer journeys. His laughter filled the house daily, and his progress continued to astound the medical professionals who visited regularly. It was a Thursday morning when everything changed. Daniel was reviewing architectural plans in his office when Charles entered, his face grave. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. Your former in-laws." Daniel's blood ran cold. He hadn't heard from Sarah's parents, Margaret and William Ashford, since the funeral. They'd been traveling abroad, grieving in their own way, completely absent from Eli's life. "Where are they?" "The formal living room, sir." They arrived with a lawyer. Daniel's jaw clenched. "Make sure Mavis keeps Eli in the playroom. I don't want him to see them until I know what this is about." The Ashfords looked older than Daniel remembered. Margaret's perfectly coiffed silver hair and designer suit couldn't hide the weariness in her eyes. William stood by the window, his attorney's posture rigid with purpose. "Margaret, William," Daniel greeted them coolly. "This is unexpected. We've been following the news," Margaret said, her voice sharp. "Imagine our surprise to learn from tabloids that our grandson is walking, that he's being cared for by some woman with no qualifications. Her name is Mavis Washington," Daniel said evenly, "and she's done more for Eli than any qualified professional ever did." William turned from the window. "We've also heard disturbing reports about your judgment, Daniel. Choosing this woman over your board of directors? Allowing your son to be exploited by media? Get to the point," Daniel said. Their lawyer, a thin man named Gerald Hoffman, stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Ashford are petitioning for custody of Eli Sterling, citing parental negligence and emotional instability." Daniel felt the world tilt. "You can't be serious." "We're completely serious," Margaret said. You've allowed an untrained stranger to experiment on our grandson. You've put him at risk for what? A feel-good story. Eli is walking because of Mavis, Daniel said, his voice dangerously low. He's speaking, laughing, living because of her. He's being manipulated, William countered. This woman lost her own child and is clearly projecting her grief onto Eli. It's psychological abuse. You want to talk about abuse? Daniel stood, his control slipping. Where were you? Where were you when Eli couldn't speak? When doctors said he'd never walk? Where were you when he needed grandparents who believed in him? We were grieving our daughter, Margaret said coldly. Unlike you, who replaced her so quickly with this maid. Before Daniel could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. You're talking about Mavis. Everyone turned to see Eli standing there. No walker, just his own determination keeping him upright. Mavis appeared behind him, clearly having tried to stop him. I'm sorry, she said to Daniel. He heard voices and insisted. These are Mommy's parents, Eli said, looking at the Ashfords with those piercing blue eyes so like Sarah's. But Mommy wouldn't like what you're saying. Margaret's composure cracked. Eli, sweetheart, we're just trying to protect you. From Mavis? Eli took a shaky step forward. She saved me. When I was stuck inside myself, she found me. You don't understand, dear, William said. You're too young. I understand everything, Eli said firmly. You think Mavis tricked me into walking. But you're wrong. She just reminded me I could. The lawyer cleared his throat. Regardless of the child's feelings, the court will consider what's in his best medical interest. The court. Mavis spoke for the first time. You're going to drag this child through a custody battle? Make him choose between his father and his grandparents. The choice will be made for him, Hoffman said smoothly, by professionals who can objectively assess the situation. Then let them assess, Daniel said. Let them see Eli's medical records, his progress, the team of doctors who now study Mavis's methods. Let them see the truth. The truth, Margaret said bitterly, is that our daughter's memory has been erased from this house, replaced by her. That's not true. Eli's voice cracked with emotion. Mavis tells me about Mommy all the time. She helps me remember her. You're the ones who forgot. You left. The room fell silent. Eli was crying now, and Mavis moved instinctively to comfort him, but stopped herself. Go ahead, Daniel said softly. He needs you. Mavis gathered Eli into her arms, and he buried his face in her shoulder. We'll see you in court, William said stiffly, leading Margaret and the lawyer out. That evening, the Sterling house was subdued. Daniel had called his legal team, preparing for the battle ahead. Mavis sat with Eli in his room, reading to him, trying to maintain normalcy. Are they going to take me away? Eli asked quietly. No, baby, Mavis said firmly. Your daddy won't let that happen, and neither will I. But what if the judge believes them? What if they say you're bad for me? Mavis set down the book and took his hands. Then we'll show them the truth. We'll show them every step you've taken, every word you've spoken, every laugh you've laughed. We'll show them that love isn't about blood or certificates. It's about showing up every day and refusing to give up. Daniel appeared in the doorway. Can I join you? Eli reached for him, and the three of them sat together on the bed. I'm scared, Daddy, Eli admitted. Me too, Daniel said honestly. But we're a family, and families fight for each other. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. The media had a field day with the story, Billionaire's in-laws fight for Miracle Boy. Public opinion was divided. Some saw the Ashfords as concerned grandparents. Others saw them as opportunists trying to control a wealthy grandchild. During those 3 weeks, something remarkable happened. Families from across the country began arriving at the Sterling estate. Parents of children with similar conditions, inspired by Eli's story, came seeking hope. Daniel and Mavis couldn't turn them away. The unfinished Grace and Eli Center became an impromptu gathering place. Mavis found herself teaching other caregivers her approach, the importance of seeing the child, not the condition, of using music, touch, and unwavering belief as medicine. Dr. Fitzgerald documented everything, building a case study that would revolutionize pediatric neurology. What's happening here, he told Daniel, is unprecedented. We're seeing recoveries we thought impossible. One afternoon, a week before the hearing, Caroline returned with a van full of families she'd been working with at her nonprofit. They wanted to testify, she explained, about what Mavis's methods have meant for their children. The day of the hearing arrived gray and drizzly, matching everyone's mood. The courthouse was surrounded by media and supporters. Signs reading "Love Heals" and "Family is More Than Blood" were held high. Inside the courtroom, Judge Patricia Thornton, a woman known for her fairness and thorough consideration of children's welfare, presided. The Ashfords sat with their legal team on one side, Daniel and Mavis with theirs on the other. The Ashfords' lawyer painted a picture of recklessness, an emotionally compromised father allowing an unqualified woman to experiment on a vulnerable child. They brought in a doctor who testified that Eli's recovery could be temporary, that false hope could cause psychological damage. Daniel's team countered with medical evidence, Dr. Fitzgerald's testimony, and video documentation of Eli's progress. But the most powerful moment came when Judge Thornton made an unusual request. "I'd like to see the child," she said. "Not to testify, but to observe, in a comfortable setting." They moved to a conference room set up with toys and books. Eli entered with Mavis and Daniel, walking slowly but steadily. The judge watched as he played, interacted, and simply existed as a normal 6-year-old boy. "Eli," the judge said gently, "can you tell me who helps you when you're scared?" "Daddy and Mavis," Eli answered without hesitation. "And who helped you learn to walk again?" "Mavis believed I could, so I did. But Daddy helps me practice every day now." "What about your grandparents?" Eli's face fell slightly. "They were sad. About Mommy. Too sad to see me. But that's okay. People get sad sometimes." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "One more question, Eli. If you could choose where to live, what would you choose?" Eli looked confused. "I already live at home. With my family." "And who is your family?" "Daddy, Mavis, Charles, Rosa, Thomas." He listed everyone at the house. "And all the kids who come to our center now. We're all family." The judge smiled softly. "Thank you, Eli." As they prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Eli walked over to his grandparents. "I'm not mad at you," he said quietly. "Mommy wouldn't want us to be mad. You can visit sometimes. If you want to know me, not just fight about me." Margaret broke down crying. William's stern facade cracked. We missed so much," Margaret whispered. "You can stop missing things," Eli said simply. "Just come home." Back in the courtroom, before the judge could rule, William stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to withdraw our petition." Gasps filled the courtroom. William continued, his voice rough. "We've been absent from our grandson's life, drowning in our own grief. We see now that Daniel and Miss Washington have given Eli what we couldn't: hope, love, and a future. We'd like to request visitation rights instead, to be part of his life, not control it." Judge Thornton nodded approvingly. "Mr. Sterling, Miss Washington, are you amenable to this?" Daniel looked at Mavis, who nodded. "Family is always welcome in our home," he said. 1 year later, the Grace and Eli Center officially opened its doors. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was attended by hundreds, families whose children had been helped, medical professionals eager to learn, and media from around the world. Eli, now 7 and walking with only a slight limp, stood at the podium with a speech he'd written himself. "When I couldn't walk, I thought I was broken," he read, his clear voice carrying across the crowd. "But Mavis showed me I wasn't broken. I was just waiting for someone to believe I could get better. Now, this center will help other kids who are waiting too." He looked up from his paper, finding Mavis in the crowd. "Mavis says that love is the best medicine. Not the only medicine, but the best. Because when someone loves you enough to never give up, you learn to never give up too." The crowd erupted in applause. Daniel took the podium next. 2 years ago, this house was a monument to grief. My son was imprisoned in his own body, and I was imprisoned by fear. Then Mavis Washington walked through our door, and everything changed. Not overnight, not easily, but genuinely. He looked at his former in-laws, who now visited weekly and had become active supporters of the center. "Sarah would be so proud of what we've built here. Not just this center, but this family, this community of hope." The center was more than anyone had imagined. It housed treatment rooms where traditional therapy merged with Mavis's methods, a music therapy wing where children discovered rhythm and movement, gardens where those in wheelchairs could tend plants at accessible heights. Most importantly, it had apartments where families could stay during treatment, ensuring no child faced their challenges alone. Mavis had assembled a team of caregivers, training them not just in technique, but in philosophy. See the child, not the condition, became the center's motto, emblazoned on every wall. Dr. Fitzgerald had established a research wing, documenting cases and developing protocols that were already being adopted by hospitals nationwide. We're not replacing traditional medicine, he explained to visiting doctors. We're completing it. We're adding the human element that got lost in our pursuit of clinical perfection. 6 months into the center's operation, they celebrated a milestone, their 100th patient, a 4-year-old girl named Lucy who'd been diagnosed with a condition similar to Eli's. Her parents had driven across 3 states, desperate for hope. Mavis worked with Lucy personally, just as she had with Eli. Within weeks, the girl who hadn't moved in months was wiggling her toes. Her laughter echoed through the center's halls, joining the chorus of children rediscovering joy. How do you do it? Lucy's mother asked Mavis one afternoon. How do you believe so completely? Mavis pulled out the worn photo of Grace she still carried. Because someone has to. Because every child deserves someone who sees them whole, even when they're broken. Especially when they're broken. The documentary about Eli and the center, titled She Believed First, premiered on a major streaming platform. It followed 3 families through their journeys at the center, with Eli serving as a peer mentor to younger children. In one powerful scene, Eli was shown working with a boy named Marcus who'd given up trying. I know it's hard, 7-year-old. Eli said wisely. But Mavis taught me something. She said our bodies might forget how to move, but our spirits never forget how to fly. You just need someone to remind you. The documentary won several awards, but more importantly, it led to an explosion of interest in the center's methods. Medical schools began incorporating Mavis's approaches into their curricula. Insurance companies started covering complementary emotional therapy. One evening, as the sun set over the center, Mavis walked through the gardens. Many of the children were outside, some in wheelchairs, some walking with aids, some running freely. Their laughter created a symphony of hope. She stopped at a bench where a small plaque read, "In memory of Grace Washington, who taught us that love is the strongest medicine." Daniel found her there, as he often did at this time of day. "Eli's looking for you," he said, sitting beside her. "He wants to show you his science project." "A science project already? He's growing up too fast." "He is," Daniel agreed. "Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us," Mavis corrected. "It takes a village, remember?" They sat in comfortable silence, watching the children play. Margaret and William were here today, reading to a group of younger patients. Charles was teaching some older kids chess. Rosa was in the kitchen with several parents, teaching them nutrition for recovery. The Sterling estate had truly become a home for healing. "I have something for you," Daniel said, pulling out an envelope. Mavis opened it to find legal documents. "What's this?" "Adoption papers. Not for you to sign. They're already complete." Eli insisted, and the court approved. "You're officially his legal guardian now. Co-parent, with all rights and responsibilities." Mavis's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me raise him. Say you'll stay. I already promised forever, remember?" "I remember. But now it's legal. You're not just family in our hearts. You're family in every way that matters." That night, they held a celebration dinner in the main house. Eli sat between Daniel and Mavis, holding both their hands as Charles brought out a cake that read, "Family Forever." "Speech," Rosa called out, and others joined in. Eli stood, still a bit wobbly but determined. "When I was stuck in my body, I thought I was alone. But Mavis found me. And then Daddy found us both. And now we found all of you." He gestured to the room full of staff, patients, families, and friends. "My mommy in heaven sent Mavis to us. I know because Mavis's daughter Grace needed an angel friend, and Mommy needed us to have an angel on earth. So they made a trade." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Mavis taught me that walking isn't just about legs. It's about choosing to move forward even when it's hard. Daddy taught me that being strong means letting people help you. And together, they taught me that family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who shows up and stays." The next morning brought one final surprise. A letter arrived from the National Medical Innovation Board, announcing that the Grace and Eli Center had won a grant of $50 million to expand nationwide. We can help so many more children, Daniel said, reading the letter aloud at breakfast. We will, Mavis said confidently. One child at a time. One family at a time. One miracle at a time. Eli looked up from his cereal. Mavis, when I grow up, I want to be like you. Like me. Someone who helps kids remember they can fly. Mavis hugged him tight. You already are, baby. You already are. 5 years passed. Eli, now 12, walked without any assistance. He played soccer, rode bikes, and lived the full life everyone said he'd never have. The center had expanded to 5 locations across the country, with plans for international branches. At the 5th anniversary gala, Eli gave another speech, this time as a poised preteen who'd grown tall and strong. They called her a maid, he began, echoing the line that had become the center's unofficial slogan. But she became the miracle they never saw coming. Mavis Washington didn't just teach me to walk. She taught me to rise. She taught all of us that the impossible is just something that hasn't been done with enough love yet. He paused, looking at Mavis and Daniel in the front row. Some people are born into families. Some people choose their families. And some people, the lucky ones, get both. I was born to an amazing mom who had to leave too soon. I was raised by an amazing dad who learned that strength means being vulnerable. And I was saved by an amazing woman who showed me that love doesn't need a medical degree. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Mavis stood too, tears streaming down her face as Eli walked to her, no trace of his former limitations. Thank you, he whispered in her ear as they embraced. For believing first. Thank you, she whispered back, for proving me right. As the celebration continued around them, Daniel joined their embrace. 3 souls who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together, the final scene of the documentary update showed them walking through the center's gardens at sunset, Daniel in the middle, Eli on one side, Mavis on the other. Eli was teaching a new patient how to take her first steps, his patience and encouragement echoing everything Mavis had taught him. The narrator's voice closed the film. They called her a maid. But Mavis Washington became something more, a mother, a healer, a revolutionary who changed how we see recovery. She reminded us that medicine isn't just about the body. It's about the soul. And when you heal the soul, the body remembers how to follow. The screen faded to black with one final message. The Grace and Eli Center has helped over 10,000 children rediscover movement, speech, and hope. Every child deserves someone who believes they can fly. In the credits, a photo appeared, Mavis, Daniel, and Eli at Eli's high school graduation, where he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. He would go on to study pediatric medicine, inspired by the woman who'd refused to let him disappear into his diagnosis. But that was the future. For now, in this moment, they were simply a family who'd learned that miracles aren't about the impossible happening. They're about never stopping believing it could. What would you have done if everyone told you to give up on someone you loved? Would you have the courage to believe when no one else did? If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story that reminds us all what it truly means to never give up on each other.